Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Prime Minister declared austerity over. The Chancellor downgraded this prediction to say it's coming to an end. But the reality is each department is having to make 3% departmental cuts. So this hardly backs up the statements. And of course, the corporate giants still enjoy their £110 billion corporate tax giveaway, while 1,000 people have seen their personal wealth increase by $274 billion over the last 5 years. But as for my constituents, and many like them up and down the country, the harsh reality of services slashed and under increasing pressure and the daily experience of living in poverty or just scraping by was not addressed by this budget. We all know that money is going to the wrong places, and it will take a radical Labour government to restructure and transform our economy to make sure that we invest in people's future. Now, I want to turn to the high streets because on the 8th of March 2017, resultant of the valuation process and the sharp increases in business rates, we were promised a full business rate review. It hasn't happened, and instead we have seen temporary relief schemes given to local authorities, badly managed by local authorities, and then withdrawn. So we didn't hear yesterday about how all of that temporary relief has been withdrawn from small businesses, impacting on pubs losing £1,000 and impacting on other small businesses, not to mention medium-sized businesses, the anchors of our high streets, who will not be eligible for the third reduction in their business rates. This, again, will have a massive impact on our high streets, but we did not hear that from the Chancellor yesterday. And of course, the announcement was, again, for a short term, just 2 years, as all funding is so short-term. It's about crisis management of our high streets. When businesses are having to sign 10-year long leases, they cannot make those long-term investments if the government doesn't back them up. And of course, we still see the inequality between our high streets and the out-of-town retail sector and our high streets and online shopping. And that wasn't properly addressed either, because we've seen the plasters thrown out last year, bandages this year, but what we need is surgery on our business rate system, real reform taking place. And I will not give up until we see that real reform. And of course, we need to address the causation of this, which I have not yet heard from this government. The fact that we have investors, mainly offshore investors, owning the properties in our high street. Whilst the revenue they could get from tenants is helpful, it's pocket money compared to the scale of their investments, holding up pension schemes and other investments. That was not tackled, and until it is, we are going to continue with the crisis on our high streets. The escalation in rental value in places like York is extortionate. And what we are seeing is the government providing relief for this corporate greed. We need to address the greed where it sits, because what we're seeing is a creation of a bubble on our high streets, and when that bursts, we will see a real collapse. So I urge the Chancellor to address the real problem of business rates moving forward. But I also want to highlight that suggestions have been put forward, a turnover tax or a profit-based tax, which is far, far fairer and will create greater equality, which we need to see. Now, I just want to refer, Madam Deputy Speaker, to one of my streets, Coney Street in York. We have in York about 50 properties empty, but in Coney Street, footfall fell by 9.3% in the previous year, 15% over the last 2 years. That's about just short of 27,000 fewer shoppers. I'm sorry I don't have time. The Honourable Member had an opportunity to put in for the debate. But what we have seen is that since September 2016, real decline on Coney Street. This year alone, 12 stores have closed. And unbelievably, that's where W.H. Smith is based, which is now meant to be hosting the post office, where there isn't the traffic, closing the site, the prime site where the post office currently is on Lendal, where there is the busiest thoroughfare of our city, and it has been there since 1884. This is the most perverse decision, and I urge the Business Secretary, as he is listening, to look at the case of York and reverse that decision so that we can have a vibrant post office in York, as opposed to losing the opportunity of having that public service in a good place on our high streets. So yet another year passes, the government ducking to tackle the real challenges on our high streets, and we therefore need a Labour government to revive our high streets and our communities.
Morris.